All right, so we're on our second lesson for May 12th, so on Wednesday. So we're going to look at the slope and a y-intercept and on a graph. So I'm going to share the screen here. We're going to have to change quite often because we're going to look at some graphs. So the slope y-intercept form of a linear equation, so linear meaning that on the graph it becomes a line, is written in the form of mx plus b. So when we look at our equation here, so we know that y is our dependent variable. We know that m is our slope. So m is our slope. X is our independent variable, so just our normal x. And then our b is our y-intercept. So the y-intercept is when our graph crosses over when it crosses over to across the y-axis. Okay, so it's telling us to do an investigation. So I'm going to switch screens. What I'm going to do is I'll just show you my desktop altogether. It's a bit of a mess. So they want us to put y equals x. So y is equal to x. So when we look at this, our slope is 1 over 1. So our slope is 1. Okay. So if we go back to this guy, you would write here, so you're picking 2 points. So I picked 0, 0, and 1, 1. And we saw that our rise is 1, our run is 1. So that means that our slope is 1. So I'm not going to write it just because it would just mess up with my screen a little bit. So here you're going to write that our slope is 1. If we change the graph to be y equals 2x, what does it do? So we're going to pick 2 points. So our rise is 1, 2, and our run is 1. So that means that our slope is 2 over 1 or 2. So if you go back to your worksheet, you would write that your slope here is 2. So you're noticing that the number in front of the x is our slope. So we're going to try with 3x now. Okay, so we're using these 2 points. So our rise is going to be 1, 2, 3. Our run is going to be 1. So I'm going to write these ones down. Okay, so for this guy, our slope is 3. We're going to go back to here. We're going to change it to 4. I know that my writing is going to be on the screen. That's the way it is. Okay, so if we have 4x, we're going to move this a little bit here. So we're going to go from 0 up to this point. So our rise is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. So that means that our slope is going to be 4. What happens if we change it to 10? So if we have 10x. So we go back to our graph. So 10x should change at some point. There you go. We're going to zoom in again. Oh, I guess we can't. So it gets so big that you can't really. But our rise becomes 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and then 1. So our slope becomes 10. So as you're seeing, the number that is in front of the x is going to be your slope. Okay, so I'm not going to keep doing the investigation with the graph. I think you get the point. So this one, our slope would be 0.5. So whenever there's not a number in front of our x, assume that it's 1. And this is a negative. So -1, -2, -3, and -4. Okay, So I'm going to clear this and we're going to move forward. So our findings. So what happened to the steepness of a line as the value of the slope increases? So as the slope increased, we saw that the graph became more steep. Steeper. Okay, so as the slope increases, the line became steeper. And then we already know this. So what happens to the line when there's a negative in front of the x value? So that means that it goes down. So from left to right on the graph, the line goes down. Okay, so what can we conclude about the relationship between a linear equation in the form y equals mx plus b and its slope? So we could say the slope affects the steepness and the direction of the line. Okay, so it could either be going upwards or it could be going downwards, and it also affects how steep our slope is. Okay, so now we're going to look at the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is where the point where the graph intersects the y-axis. So right here, it crosses the y-axis and it touches it. So in other words, it's when x is equal to 0. So if you don't have a graph, all you can do is put in x for 0 and you would find your answer. So I'm going to clear this. Okay, so it's asking us again. Yeah, I might as well do it. Okay, so when y is equal to x, where does it cross over? So we look here and we see that it crosses over at 0. So this means that the y-intercept here is 0. Okay, so we're going to put a 0 there. What is the y-intercept of the equation y equals x? So it is 0, 0. So we put it as a point like this. Now if we put x plus 2, we see here that it crosses at the point 0, 2. So right here is where it crosses. Okay, so we're going to go back here and we're going to write down the value. So for the equation y equals x plus 2, what is the value of y when x is equal to 0? So it's 2. Okay, and we see that the y-intercept of it is 0, 2. Okay, so we're going to try now with x plus 3. So x plus 3, where does it cross over? So we look at the y-axis and it crosses at 0.3. So 3. And then our y-intercept, we have to write it as a point, so it'll always be 0 and then the number. Now if we look here, this is 5. Our y-intercept becomes 0, 5. The sign that's in front of the number stays with it. So this would be -2. So it'll be 0, -2. Okay. And this one would be -7. So 0, -7. So I'm going to erase this so I can continue. So if we scroll down here, so for this one, we look here, there's no plus or minus anything after x. So this is just 0. So this means that it would be at the origin. So it would be 0, 0. This one would be 1, which means our y-intercept point would be 0, 1. This one would be 4, 0, 4. And this would be -5. Okay. So then we have our findings. So I'm going to clear this one off. So what can you conclude about the relationship between a linear equation in the form y equals mx plus b and its y-intercept? So we can tell that our b here is always going to be our y-intercept. We can conclude that our b value in the equation is our y-intercept. Okay. So then in conclusion here, so in a linear equation of the form y equals mx plus b, m represents the slope or the rate of change. It means the same thing. And b represents the y-intercept or initial value. So our starter point. The larger the slope, the steeper the line. So I'm going to clear this off. So here you have practice questions. You are going to need a line paper for it or a Word doc for it. Yeah. And then I will come back to this third lesson shortly.